It was the early 90s, and I was working with a skeleton crew of about 15 people in a bra factory in Georgia, on the night shift. I was just 18 years old, but had recently received my first loan ever from the credit union, and as an intelligent teen, I purchased a bright red Porsche 944. At night, all the lights in the plant would be turned off, except for the section I worked in. One night while leaving, I noticed that one of the company trucks outside had left their interior lights on, but thought nothing of it. Not my problem. The next morning, a duffel bag containing $750,000 were found in the cab of the truck, and a box with 50 kilos of cocaine was found inside the plant. The police promptly came and took possession of the money and drugs. A couple of nights later, an overseas trailer was dropped off, and it was discovered to have a false wall filled with more cocaine. They decided to leave it as bait, but no one came for the pickup. A few days later, my friends decided to just up and leave to go to live in Florida, and I, as a teen, was totally down with this awesome plan, so I quit my job and moved with them. Back then, I thought nothing of this, but thinking back, I was in a plant at the same time of night some heavy drug operations were going down, and there could have been a guy in that truck crouched down when I noticed its light was on. Had he seen me, I would probably have been killed. Then I imagine how I must have appeared to the drug dealers. A dumb teenage kid buys a bright red Porsche, quits his job and moves to Florida, where coke deals go down all the time. All in a couple of days they lost millions in drugs and cash while on my shift. I like to think of myself as pretty lucky to be alive.
Number 2.
When I was 17, I worked as a busboy at a high-end country club restaurant. It was the sort of place where people paid all-inclusive yearly memberships. They could roll into the restaurant after 9 holes, stuff their faces, and get wasted and head back out for more grass hockey. Anyway, policy was that the restaurant closes when the members are finished. This could mean you got to leave at 9 p.m. or 2 a.m., depending on which members were hanging out. This could mean some really late nights. One of the fun parts of the job was hopping into one of the staff carts and driving around the course to restock all of the snack shacks. These were little stalls that had sodas, chocolates, and other miscellaneous crap you could jam into your face while watching a buddy 8 strokes deep in a bunker. Late one night, after a wedding reception, and after we fed and shot the shit with the band, I got shack duty. Everyone else was busting ass on cleanup and next day prep, so I went solo. I was stoked. It was accepted practice to nab a couple bars for oneself when doing the rounds. So I hop into a cart and head out onto the course. It's getting close to 3 a.m. So I'm not sure if you've been out on an unlit golf course at 3 a.m. But it's a little surreal. It's not like you're in the wild. Everything is smooth lines and picturesque, but you are far away from anything. Lots of fencing is up to keep critters and people out too. Never really had any concerns at all being out there late at night. Except this time. I'm at hole 6, heading up to the snack shack, like a porta potty sized pantry, in the cart when the door slams shut. I can't really react. Someone screams from inside.
I will fucking kill you.
So I lose my shit and beeline back to the rest stop at the cart's top speed, shitting bricks and attempting not to think about getting shot in the back. By the time I get back, I've convinced myself it's a prank and everyone's going to be laughing at me. But my boss sees my face. I tell him what happened. Tells me only a couple people haven't clocked out. It's not staff. Police come out, take a statement, search the shack. All the food and soda is gone. The interior is plastered with shit and blood and random letters on the walls. They even found a hole dug under the perimeter fence. I stopped doing night runs to the snack shacks. They tore that one down. Good times. I can't see anything related to golf without thinking about it.
Number 3.
Back when I was 18, I worked as a Tim Hortons supervisor, and a lot of the time, I would do a closing shift, which was 4 p.m. to midnight, usually. Sometimes, if it was a particularly busy night, I would have to stay later to clear up and take inventory. Also, a lot of the time, it was just myself, as the baker wouldn't start until 2 a.m. My issues began when I started to notice 2 men, who I presumed were father and son, coming in every day. This isn't unusual, but they would watch the staff and stay for hours at a time. I'm talking 6 hours worth of sitting and just watching. They wouldn't even order anything. Gradually, they formed an attachment to one employee and would find ways to talk to her. They seemed to know her schedule and would bring her gifts, such as flowers and handwritten notes. She would try to fend them off, but they got pretty insistent, and it got to the point of the employee not wanting to work there anymore. I was quite close with her, and I knew that she really needed the job, as she was a single mother, so I voiced my concerns to the managers. They told me there's little they can do. They said they could ban them from our side of the building, but we were joined to a Wendy's, and they can't ban them from that side. The approach didn't work and only seemed to aggravate the men further. They started coming and staying for even longer periods of time. The employee quit. They approached me and asked about her, but I told them that I didn't know anything. This is about the time they switched their attention to me. After several months of similar patterns as previous, I started to compile as much information about them as I could so I could build a case for the police. License plate, first names, make of vehicle, and town they're from. Then after 4 months of fending off their advances, things got out of hand. I worked a particularly late night. We shut the doors at 10 p.m. and I was alone up until 2. Finishing just as the baker arrived. Upon leaving, I noticed the men's van was still in the parking lot. It was parked just 2 stalls away from mine, when earlier it was on the other side of the lot. It's safe to say that my spidey senses were tingling. And I asked the baker to walk me to my car. Sure enough, I saw them sitting in the van, watching me get in my car. I pulled away and drove fast. But to my horror, I saw that they were following me. I tried to shake them off, yet failed miserably due to the lack of traffic. Hard to run from someone on a straight 50k zone with nothing but green lights. I didn't want to lead them to my house, so I pulled out my phone, and of course, it was dead. Of all days. After 20 minutes of driving around aimlessly, my luck changed, and I saw a police car up ahead. So I did the only thing I could think of. I passed the cop doing 80 kilometers an hour and got myself pulled over. After explaining the story to the police and giving him the man's information, I was let go on a warning. The next day, I found out that the information I gave the police got the men arrested. They were wanted for an attack on a Dairy Queen employee from my town. But the police weren't able to identify them before then. The employee who had quit also started working again. Plus, it caused momentum to get a change in the scheduling so that there is always more than one employee in at any time.
Number 4.
So this happened at my work in the Netherlands. I'm 29 now. The story happened 10 years ago. At the time, I was jobless, and I found a job as a security guard in an office building. The office building was in a forested area, away from any busy streets, very secluded. The person who had the job before me had a car accident and apparently was paralyzed from their waist down. Nobody was interested in the job since he worked during the night, and the office building was so big, it was just boring as hell. But hey, a job is a job. Once I started, a supervisor worked me in for a week. What to do, etc. This was my first night working by myself. I came to work and took the shift over from my colleague at 9 p.m. He told me there were still some people left in the building. Before I went up to the 15th floor, I closed the main entrance in such a way you can only exit when you're inside, so no outsiders could come in. After I did this, I went up to the 15th floor where these people still worked to ask them if they needed to go anywhere else in the building. If not, I could make my round and close off all the other floors, which I did. So I made my rounds and found nothing peculiar. I went back to my front desk. This was around 11:30 p.m. and the last people who were working on the 15th floor were just leaving. And the guy told me he was the last to leave and wished me a good night. Once the last person left, I went up to the 15th floor, checked all the offices, and locked it down. I went down to my front desk again, since there were no people left. I put on the alarms, which work on motion detection and also when you open a fire exit on every floor, except the ground floor where my desk was. Within 5 minutes I put the alarm on all the floors. The alarm went off on the 10th, and there was nobody in the building. The rule is, if an alarm goes off, you first call the security company before you take action. I told them I would investigate the alarm and I would call them back once I checked it out. Otherwise, if I don't call back, they would send a police car to check it out, just as a precaution. I checked the whole 10th floor and found nothing. I went back to call the security company telling them it was a false alarm. I kid you not. The alarm on the 10th floor went off like 7 times in an hour, and every time I checked the floor, I couldn't find anything out of order, or even that there was someone there. Since this was my first day working alone, and the alarm went off so many times, the security company thought I was screwing things up and wanted to file a complaint to my boss, which would mean I would lose my job I just had for a week. In retrospect, the following was the dumbest thing I could ever do. Because the alarm went off again, since I didn't want to call the security company again and cry wolf, I went up to the 10th floor without informing the security company. The only thing I had on me was a mag light, since security guards in the Netherlands are not allowed to carry guns. I went up to the 10th floor, checked the floor, and as before, found nothing. The only difference now was I pretended to leave, turned off the lights, and stayed on the 10th floor, listening if someone was there. In about 5 minutes, I heard someone or something moving. I was relieved and anxious at the same time. Relieved I wasn't wrong and that there was something on the floor. Anxious because of what was on the floor. I turned on the lights and tried to sound as manly as possible, saying something on the line of, "I know there's someone here. Show yourself." As you can imagine, no response. So stupid I didn't go down to call for help, but stupid me when looking to whatever it was I heard on the 10th floor. I walked to the office I heard the sound from, turned on the lights, and found a little girl who couldn't be older than 13 with long brown hair, in white pajamas, squatting and rocking front to back on a desk, looking straight at me. The scary thing was, there was no emotion in her face or in her eyes. After almost shitting myself, I collected my nerves and took the girl by the hand. What can a small girl do to a 6-foot tall guy? I took her down to the front desk, offered her a Coke, but she didn't respond whatsoever. The only thing I could do was call my supervisor and told him about what I had encountered. My supervisor's response was, "Stay there, I'll be right over." The time I hung up the phone until my supervisor came, I just had this underbelly feeling with this girl, that there was something really wrong with her. Before my supervisor turned up, he called me and told me to call an asylum, which was pretty close to the office building I worked at, just to check if someone was missing. Why would there be a 13-year-old girl in an office building with no houses nearby whatsoever? So that's what I did. I called the asylum, asking if there was someone missing, and I got the scariest response you can get. They told me yes, as a matter of fact, someone was missing. I gave them a description of the girl sitting next to me, and it was in fact the girl who was missing from the asylum. They told me she was really dangerous and that I should watch my back at all costs. They immediately sent people over to take the little girl with them. A week later, my supervisor told me the story of the girl I found, since he talked with the people from the asylum. It turns out, she killed her mom, dad, and little brother while they were sleeping when she was 11. Even in the asylum, she wounded staff members, either by stabbing them with a pencil or in another case, biting off a piece of an ear. To this day, we still have no clue how she ever came in the building. We checked all the cameras, and there was no footage of her ever entering the building.